How's it going, people? Welcome back to the Supporters Club. We're going to be discussing Emery and his progress so far at Arsenal. Today I have with me Harry from Symeou Arsenal.
Pleasure to be back.
Lee Gunner and Deluded makes a return.
Cheers, man.
Let's start with Lee Gunner today. Unai Emery, what's your feelings on him so far?
I'm over the moon with him, if I'm being honest. I think that he's coming off of the back of a manager that's been here over 2 decades. He's inherited a team that was good enough to finish 5th and 6th in the last 2 seasons. And I think with the signings he's made, I think all of them have done pretty well. Some have done better than others, like Torreira, Socrates, they're head and shoulders above the rest for me.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're doing a lot better than we have done in recent years under him is credit to him, but also credit to the players as well for actually stepping up, because they now know that he is not afraid to drop players.
Yeah.
So I think so far it's, the results have been up and down. Yes, our defence is worse than last season, but that'll come in time. You know, we've only had 2 transfer windows, of which one we signed a loan player.
Yeah.
So, you know, good old Arsenal. But I think give him another summer window. I think we'll see a lot of players go out, a few more come in, and then we kick on again next season. But for me, so far, I think he's been fantastic and he's brought a breath of fresh air back to the fans as well.
Yeah, you know me, Lee. I think on this panel here, I think me and you are very much advocates of Wenger out and a change in management, a change in philosophy at Arsenal. So I agree with you. The change that's been made, I believe an improvement has come. But Harry, obviously you see another side of things.
I think the change was obviously necessary. I don't think anybody disputes that. I think 9 out of 10 Arsenal fans would have said that Arsene Wenger needed to go, and that's fair enough. I think for me, what I'm struggling with when looking at the fan base at the moment is people being so afraid of criticising some of Unai Emery's decisions. He has made a lot of mistakes this season. Like Lee said, the results have been up and down. For me, the biggest issue is the fact that we've not improved defensively. And like, I know you mentioned some of the signings have done well so far, but take a step back, take a more broader view of it. And if you think that we signed a goalkeeper, a right back, a centre back and a defensive midfielder, yet we've not improved defensively, that tells me that that business wasn't as good as some people might think it was. So it's not that I don't support Unai Emery. I support whoever's in the dugout for Arsenal, of course I do. But for me, there's been a lot of mistakes. I think he's had to drop his principles a little bit and bringing Ozil back in the team and going back to the back 4 and changing things to get the results back on track. And, you know, at the beginning of the season, we were talking about the impact, the subs that he makes. For me, that kind of shows you're, A, getting it wrong in the first place, and B, you know, it's obvious to bring on a striker when you're chasing a goal. It's not a tactical masterclass. If Aubameyang's on the bench and you bring him on with 20 minutes to go, that isn't a tactical genius. That's the obvious thing to do. So I just think that people need to stop getting carried away with Unai Emery. I'm convinced that he was a stopgap appointment. I will support him no matter what. I'm an Arsenal fan, but I'm yet to be convinced that he's the man for this job for the next 3-4 years.
Yeah, I hear that, because I do agree with some points, and I think Lee and Deluded would agree that he has made mistakes this season. He probably doesn't know his best 11. He probably doesn't know his best formation yet. But I think that slightly has to do with what he was left with or what he picked up when he signed the contract.
I think we always talk about what a bad state the team was left in. And if you look at the key players this season, if you look at it's Aubameyang and Lacazette, and they were players that were already there. So I'm surprised that he didn't focus more on the defensive side of the game. And he brought some players in, but I want to see the team drilled better. And that's my disappointment. Individual mistakes, you can't blame the manager for them. Yeah. And you can only say that maybe he's picking the wrong players. But we've been unlucky with injuries and things like that. But I want to see this team drilled and set up a lot better. And I think that's where he's lacking. And I think if you look back over his history, Unai Emery's teams have always lacked that.
You both made a point about the defence. So Deluded, let's stick to the defence right now. Would you put our defensive naiveties or our defensive record down to Emery, or do you see what he picked up as part of the issue?
It's a bit on both. I don't think you can personally have any side really, because if we look at it, we've kept 5 clean sheets, we've played 20 odd games. The defensive mistakes, they've been there against Liverpool, they've been there against Brighton, they've been there against United and so on. So you do have to have sympathy for him. Our players clearly can't concentrate for sustained periods of time. But if you look at these mistakes and the sequence and what our players are actually doing, covering space, covering for your man, following runners in midfield, we're not doing them sort of things. So that is with Unai Emery. That being said, I do discount him a lot because, not to name drop players, but we know Mustafi and these players again are unable to concentrate. So it's a bit of both. I'm more side with Unai Emery because he's had injuries and he's had some poor players to work with. But at the same time, 5 clean sheets in 20 odd games isn't just on these players. It has to do with the coaching and what we're doing, and it's going to take a long time to make the correct decisions because it needs to be within our thinking. We've improved in terms of set pieces offensively and defensively and playing out from the back statistically, and that's a fact if you watch us. So it's going to happen. It's there. Will he be backed and sign a good centre-half? On the topic of signing a world-class centre-half or a top-quality centre-half, what Harry said about the system, we could sign the best centre-half in the world. Of course, it would improve us in terms of his ability, but there's not a system in place. Everybody will look, there's not a structure. Everyone will look like a child, essentially, out of there. So we need to see more of that. I do think we need to see a bit more offensively. I know I'm going off topic, but I'd like to see a bit more offensively. I sound like a hypocrite. We've scored a lot of goals and we've done some great moves and stuff, but I just feel in terms of our general play, beyond just individual brilliance and the great moves they can put together on their day, there's not really an emphasis there. Like we was talking off camera, a top 6 side, if Kolasinac, with all due respect, he's playing quite well, if he's your most attacking threat, there's an issue. And on the topic of that, Kohler's very good going forward. We need him to go forward.
Yeah.
Clearly his strengths are there. Unai Emery is telling him to do that. If you look at the space that's being vacated, even if you look at when we played United at home in the FA Cup when Lukaku exploited it, we're leaving too many gaps. So between the midfielders or the defence, something either needs to be coached or the players need to do better. So again, you can't really have an opinion in terms of it. It's more wait and see. I'm more side with Unai again, but it's a bit of both in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword, you know
Exactly.
what I mean? And I want to go back to the players that you mentioned, and he bought, 4 defensive reinforcements in, was it?
Yeah.
Leno,
Lichtsteiner, Socrates, and I'd count Torreira. Defensive midfield player.
Obviously, Lichtsteiner was brought in probably for experience, cover, put Bellerin, teach him a thing or two, do you know what I mean? Push him a bit. So with that, apart from his wages, I have nothing against that signing. But with Torreira, Leno and Socrates, I believe they've improved our team. Maybe not statistically defensively, but in terms of stamping our authority in the game. Socrates, Torreira, they fully do that. Leno, he makes great saves at 0-0. He makes great saves when we're 1-0 up. He's shown us something this year. And I tend to always go back to money. A lot of people on YouTube are calling me accountant now because I'm always mentioning Ozil's money. But money is everything in football right now. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's a difficult one because he needs to spend to improve this team. And 60 mil is not enough. When you put it into perspective, Liverpool are what Liverpool are now because of 150 mil investment in their defence on 2 players, as well as 2 coming through their youth system in Robertson and Alexander-Arnold, which has benefited them. They've given Klopp the 4 years. And that's how I see us moving forward. But the money has to come in.
The thing with the money issue is, and a lot of people always say this, Unai needs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 even transfer windows to get the players in he needs. We've seen that this board are not going to get him the players he needs. We've gone out and we've shopped in the second level of players. That's what we've done. We've gone and looked for bargains and we've brought these players in. What makes people think that this board are going to give him money going forward? The January window came, we did nothing. What makes people think that in the summer we're going to spend what's required to get the top level players in? Therefore, you need a manager that can get the maximum out of this group. And I'm not saying he won't be that manager, but right now I'm not yet convinced that he can do, say, what Pochettino's done and overachieve with the players he's got.
Personally, my response to that is, obviously, Kroenke is not the best owner. But put him aside for a second and look at the money spent under Wenger in the last 3 years, and a lot of the money was wasted. I'm talking about Mustafi, 35 mil. I'm even going to mention Xhaka, 35 mil, because in comparison, when you could have bought Kante for 32, or like other defenders, I think Van Dijk was 12 mil at the time, Alderweireld was pretty cheap. The business was pretty bad, and I think that's what got to the point of Wenger having to be let go. So I think obviously the board are probably a bit wary about where the money goes to next, but essentially we have no money no more. It's about wiping off the wages because Emery has no freedom, and that's what January showed us. So it's about wiping off the mismanagement of the past first, and it's a massive job. If we allow him the chance to wipe off some of the wages, we have to allow him the chance to build on that. Otherwise, we'll be left in a position where if we bring in another manager, same way Emery doesn't seem to like Ozil's playing style, the next manager might not like Torreira's playing style. So we've gone and wasted money on him or wages on him. And it could be a roll-on effect managerial-wise. So that my support for Emery comes because he hasn't been given the full backing of the board yet. Understandably, it's his first year. But I believe his signings, Torreira and Guendouzi especially, are probably 2 of the most valuable free players at Arsenal in terms of value. I think apart from Ozil, I think the next players in terms of value selling on would be Touré and Guendouzi. So I think Emery has shown the board, and Leno's probably worth 40 mil on that. Just doubled, just like that. 40 mil still cheap for a keeper, but he is showing the board. Whether it was Sven, it might be Sven, because I know Deluded, you do a lot of the youth stuff, so you might know more about it. It might have been Sven that helped with that, it might be Raul, but he's brought in 3 players that have added in value. When was the last time that happened at Arsenal Football Club? When did we buy a player and his value doubled, tripled? I can't remember the last player before Guendouzi, Touré and Leno. So he has shown me something there, but I also agree with you, defensively we've got worse. But Lee, like, what's your take on it? Obviously...
See, I disagree with what Harry's saying, right? Because I do think players have improved. Yeah. Bellerin, Xhaka, even Mustafi at the times this season. Holding, he was superb in that unbeaten run. Then he got injured. Even Bellerin has stepped up levels this season. Again, another one injured. And Iwobi, for me, is levels above what we've seen in play at Arsenal. So they've all improved as far as I'm concerned. But then what I want to know is, you said that we've signed 4 defensive players and we've got worse in defence. How many errors leading to a goal have them 4 players made this season?
No, and that's a fair point. But what I'm trying to say is, look at the overall picture of where the team is at, because there's so many like things that you can look at and say it's because of this, it's because of that. For me, Emery's relative success this season has come from the players that we already had, and has come from, you know, going out there and rolling teams and pushing teams and doing teams going forward. With Lacazette, Aubameyang, he made a fundamental mistake, in my opinion, with the whole Ozil thing. That was his biggest error to this point. And again, I want to reiterate, I don't want Emery out now, but you've got to look at it realistically. And if I'm a board and I'm sitting there and I'm watching what he's done so far, am I going to give him 200 million in the summer? Based on what I've seen so far, he hasn't shown, and it might have been Sven that brought those players in, it might have been Raul Sanllehi that brought those players in, but they have not shown that when they've given money that they can improve the side, in my opinion.
See, I totally disagree with that. We're miles better off than we have been for years, not just last season, but in the last 5 seasons we've amassed at this stage of the season our biggest points total. In the last 8 seasons, this is our 2nd highest points total. And that's not just like last season going off his worst ever season, Wenger, right? That's over 8 seasons. This is our 2nd best points total at this stage of a season. So we have improved. So, and if you think about it as well, 8 seasons ago, there weren't a big 6. It was just a big 4, wasn't it? So there's another 2 teams added into that now. So I think we have improved. The fact that we're shipping goals, I mean, most of the goals that have cost us points this season are individual mistakes. You know, up at Old Trafford, we should have won that game. We should have won that game. Against Chelsea away, we should have won that game. And that was mistakes from our strikers, missing absolute sitters in that game. And if you look at our points total now, you know, West Ham, we didn't turn up. Granted, that was a bad day. Southampton, individual errors again. We could have another 10 points on what we've already got. Yes, we haven't. But if we did have, everyone would be going, yeah, he's the best manager we've ever had. Blah, blah. See what I'm saying?
Flip that the other way. Look at the games that we've scraped through this season. And yeah, you can say we got the points on the board. But if you're looking, this is a longer term thing. It's not long term like Wenger. You're never going to see that again in football. We're talking about long term now being 3-4 seasons. If you're going to trust this guy to do the job, you need to see a vision. You need to understand what it is he's trying to do. We always compare him to Klopp. When Klopp came in at Liverpool, you could see exactly what Jurgen Klopp wanted to do. And he got backed by the fans, by the board eventually to do what he wanted to do. Unai Emery's style of football, what is it? 1 week we play with 3 at the back. The next week we play with 4. Yep. The next week we've got 2 strikers. The next week we don't have 2 strikers. Where is the blueprint for the future?
I personally think that comes down to the fact that, excuse me, that we've got injuries to key players. Rob Holding's our only ball-carrying centre-back. The rest of them get a nosebleed when they cross halfway, turn around and pass back. It's true though, isn't it, right? You know, we've got our right-back missing, so we've had to put Maitland-Niles there. We've had Lichtsteiner there. You know, we've had Mustafi there. And none of them are any good at playing at right-back
But then
anymore.
we went to Southampton with 1 half-fit centre-back. Lauren Koscielny had just come back after that long injury. That's 1 half-fit centre-back, yet he insists on playing with 3 centre-backs. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I get what you're saying, that he's restricted in what he can do with what he's got, but also then do what you need to do to get the better results. And for me, there's been games where he's had decisions to make and he's got them wrong.
I totally agree with that. There's been games this season where I've sat there and I thought, why are you starting him? Or why have you done that? And why didn't we win that game? And it was because of X, Y or Z, right? But just picking up on what you said about Liverpool a minute ago, and you could see his vision there. Last season, after 27 games of the season, Klopp had 1 point more than we had after this season, after 27 games. And this is an all singing, all dancing front three, with Salah bagging 40 goals last season, by the way. They got to a Champions League final. They had 1 point. They had 54 points.
But that's the key. They got to the Champions League final.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant. We're not in the Champions League.
The consistency of the manager helps as well in that
Exactly.
that scenario.
And the thing is, they've now kicked on another level this season because they went and filled a few more gaps with Fabinho and players like that. They filled more gaps, right? So, but they're not going to get to Champions League final this year. But they're challenging for a title now, and that's what we've got to do. We've got to take baby steps to get back up to where people. I know you don't, but a lot of people think that our manager's going to come in and turn us into title challengers just like that.
It doesn't happen overnight like that.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
For me personally, I do agree with everything both of you have actually said. I just feel personally as well that he's probably still trying to discover himself as a manager, because his reputation did take a hit at PSG. And if you look at the Arsenal job to the PSG, you rarely see a manager, probably Rafa Benitez when he went Real Madrid and Newcastle, you rarely see a manager go complete 360 or whatever it is. So he's probably still defining himself. That we have a right to criticise his coaching, because he knew what he was stepping into to a degree with the financial constraints. He knew a big part of this would be coaching. I think players like Mustafi clearly are uncoachable because they keep making the same mistakes. But we do have to see an improvement with the coaching. We're seeing it with individuals that Lee's just named. But as a team, I think we have a long way to go. The big thing is concentration. 5 clean sheets, I have to say it again. What are we doing in training? Clearly, we're working on defending in training because we've improved in some aspects, but defending for sustained periods needs to improve. It really has to, in my opinion.
Because if you look at the first 5, 6, 7 games of the season, we was predominantly passing at the back. We still do that, but we was pressing from the front. We've stopped that. That makes me think that Emery doesn't have the personnel, or doesn't believe he has the personnel to do that.
Exactly.
And that's why I do give him credit, because he's picked up a team that, in my opinion, under Wenger, had no tactics at all.
But Turkish, can I ask you something? Sorry.
Yeah.
You just said he's playing out from the back. One pet peeve I do have, as much as I back Unai Emery, is beyond playing out from the back, what are we trying to do? Like, once we get it, once the keeper distributes it to the centre halves, obviously Xhaka drops deep. What are we doing past that?
I think obviously I watch a lot of football. So when you're playing at the back, you need width. We have zero width either side. So when you're playing at the back at Arsenal, you pack the middle, we're not really going anywhere, because our best players are all through the middle.
If you want to play from the back, when you're playing with a back three in particular, you're playing from the back, your 2 centre halves spread out, and then you want your guy to come and drop deep and collect the ball. But if a team presses you higher up the pitch, you can't get that ball to them. There's no other option.
That's actually what one of my main issues with Emery is, why is it Xhaka always collecting the ball from the defence when I believe it should be Torreira, 2-footed, dynamic, and to be honest, a better, quicker passer than Xhaka, in my opinion. My problem is when Xhaka picks up the ball, when we're playing at the back, it's very slow, laboured, it's one way, left foot. So that is something that I criticise Emery about. But when I look at, because you keep on saying the bigger picture, and the bigger picture to me is, we were so mismanaged over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and the team had no tactics whatsoever. So for a manager to come into a team that's been mismanaged for 10 years, a team that's been just told to go out there and play football, not worry about the opposition for 10 years, a team that when you mess up, Wenger will put his arm around you. Don't worry, mate. It's all right. Like, don't worry about them fans there. But so, can you imagine going into that environment as a man and trying to change it all in 6 months?
You're also talking the players that we've got there. Like, we're talking about Shkodran Mustafi, World Cup winner. Laurent Koscielny. He's not, you know.
But World Cup winners are relevant because
Messi
ain't won one, Ronaldo ain't won one, and people like Cleberson have won one.
What I'm talking about is these players overall, they're not school kids. We're talking about Mustafi, who's a German international. We're talking about Koscielny, who's very experienced. We're talking about Monreal, who's very experienced. These are pro players that you should be able to get on board with what you're doing, and it's just not happened.
But ultimately, they're not good enough. And that's why. And in this league, when you're at that level, the top of the tree, you get found out.
How would you explain someone like Crystal Palace having more clean sheets than us? Are you going to tell me that
because Crystal Palace, when they go away to Man United, when they go away to Arsenal, when they go away to all the other big teams, they'll sit back, barring the Man City game this season where they took the game to them. Right? And they're very reminiscent of Leicester the year they won the title. Sit back, let you have possession, and we'll counter you with Zaha and Andros Townsend, yeah? So they will grind and park the bus and take a 0-0 in certain games. We won't. We can't afford to do that. We want to get back in that top 4.
We need to find the ability to do
We
that.
need to be able to understand
games we have to
that
sit
there are
back.
games we
Oh,
need
of
to go
course,
there and
but at the
shut
same
down.
time, individual mistakes against Bournemouth, say for example, yeah. If he doesn't dally on the ball, Guendouzi outside the box, we keep a clean sheet. That's then 6 clean sheets. You know, and there's other games this season where Declan Rice, for example, we switched off for a split second, bang, they've scored. And that won them the game.
But
so
why-
it's
why-
individual
It's a bit of
errors.
both,
That's then 7 clean sheets. You see what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like it's a work in progress
Can't be
again
one
next
side, it's a
season.
bit of both. from
It's a
both
bit
of
of
them,
yeah, it's a bit of both. But then you question why they're dallying on the ball on the edge of the box, because that's what Unai Emery's
Question
asking
if
them
they're
to
being
do.
asked that, if they're
Yeah.
being pulled up on that, because we did hear a lot about analysis and things like that. I agree with Lee. I actually am on Lee's side, but we did also hear a lot about analysis. A decision made more than once isn't a mistake; it becomes a choice. It's not just obviously there's different players. We could say Guendouzi, we could say Lichtstein, or Koscielny's my guy, but Koscielny were making the same mistake. So are we actually sitting down and working on defending in sustained periods, moving as a unit? Because if we're honest, we're the worst defensively, not just in the top 6, but arguably one of them in the league. We know we're going to have to sit back at times to improve as a side. For this season at least, we're better off just attacking and going out there and having a go, because it won't happen this year. But we need to improve in that aspect. There's no way around it, and that some of that fundamentally, is coaching. We can't get around it. There are some bad individuals within this side. I feel it through Emery.
Yeah.
I would love for him to have quality players to work with. I actually believe he'll turn it around. But it is a bit of both. We can't just be on one side in this.
Nah, you
yeah.
made great points. So you know what? To round it up, I'll stick with you, Deluded. Out of 10 so far, how do you rate Emery's tenure
It
at?
has to be a 5. We've had some good moments. We've had
5,
some
yeah?
tough moments. I'll give him a 5. A 5 is a cool result. But you know what? I could say a 6. I could say a 6, but it's
Start
a 5.
calling you tired.
I'll give it a 5. I've seen some good stuff. For me personally, just as a pet peeve, I'd like to see us be a bit better offensively. I like when he's played against like Chelsea at home or the point against Liverpool at home. Just be a bit braver. I think at times he thinks about the opposition too much. I love that he tinkers with his side, but when we get to it, we need some sort of balance, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you're
I'll
giving
give
him a 5. Yeah? Lee?
You might have to change my name to Deluded in a minute.
I'll give you a t-shirt.
I'm going to say 8.
8.
8 out of 10. Big players to the squad missing. Starting players, Holding, Bellerin, Welbeck.
Yep.
And listen, I don't rate Welbeck, but he was doing a great job off the
Back up,
bench.
yeah.
Bagged 4 goals. And all 3 of them have gone out for the season.
Yeah.
I think that his signings, or the signings that we've signed, whether they were his or not, but I think they've all done well. Even Lichtsteiner recently showed that he's still got something about him. Ultimately, going forward, he ain't the answer though. But we've got more points, we've got more away wins, we've scored more goals, you know, and we're 2 positions higher than we were last season.
Yeah.
At the same stage. So I think he's done fantastic, mate. And the fact as well that he's had the fans on his case on some of his substitutions as well.
That's true.
Yeah. You know, and I thought that was just ridiculous to boo substitutions, especially when the substitute comes on and scores the goal that kills the game.
Yeah.
You know, it's
I
like,
agree with
wait
you,
till the end of the game and then have a moan.
Yeah.
But no, listen, 8 out of 10, I think he's been brilliant,
So
mate.
we got a 5, we got 8. Harry?
I'm going to give him a 6, and the reason I give him a 6 is because I've still got a lot of reservations about him.
Yeah.
The things I've mentioned, I'm not entirely sure about, but just for the fact that we're in the hunt for the top 4, he deserves credit for that. My problem is that I'm just imagine that this whole silly thing with Ozil didn't go on.
Yeah.
I think we could have had more points, because there's games this season that I believe that a player of that quality would have made the difference. And so that's where I'm kind of reserved to give him higher than that, because I feel like, yes, you've done okay and we're in the hunt for the top 4, but because of you trying to put your foot down and trying to stamp your authority at the club, you've kind of shot yourself in the foot as well. So yeah, 6 for me.
So we've got a 6. I'm going to lean more towards Lee, 7, 8, because I'm actually very impressed with how he's taken on the job. You know how I used to feel about Arsenal pre-Emery. I believe we was a mess. From top to bottom, we was a mess. And in terms of we was a soft touch, he's actually changed that perception in 6 months. We're not a soft touch no more. We can't get kicked off the park anymore. In 6 months, he's changed what we was for 10 years. So I value that he's brought in players that have doubled in value already this season. Some tripled in Guendouzi. So he's brought in assets to us as well that in 3 years they might move on, but at least we might get 100 mil and re-spend it on a Van Dijk in 3 years, like Liverpool have done with Coutinho, Suarez. We needed assets. He's brought them in. We lack a philosophy. We lack a playing style. I put that down to personnel. But so far, even the way he's handled certain situations, the pressure, should he have left Ozil completely at the squad against Barté? No. But the way he dealt with the pressure afterwards and up until now, he's done very well, I think. So I'll stick with an 8 from him. But listen, guys, thanks for coming down. Deluded. Obviously,
Thanks
make
for
sure you
having
lot
me.
check his channel, Deluded Gooner, Lee Gunner.
Thanks for having me on again,
Your
mate.
channel, Gunner Vlogs, and Harry.
Thank you,
Same
Ant.
old
Thank you for having
AFC.
me.
Thank you for tuning in. This has been about Unai Emery. Let us know how you feel about him in the comments below. Give us a rating out of 10.